You gotta meet your customer on their preferred channel. Before you do anything, you have to set your compliant guardrails. Make sure all of that communication is seamless with engagement that just occurred.
Welcome to Heroes of AI, powered by Growfin, a thought leadership series that spotlights the unsung champions and their transformational contributions in solving some of the biggest problems in the accounts receivable space. I'm your host, Pradyut Hande, and in this episode, we feature Chris Walcher, noted AR opinion leader and the VP of Sales at Cedar Financial.
Welcome to a brand new episode of Heroes of AR powered by Growfin. I'm your host, Pradyut Hande, Associate Director of Product Marketing at Growfin, and today I'm joined by yet another influential voice in the accounts receivable and collections management space, Chris Walcher. Now, Chris is the Vice President of Sales at Cedar Financial and the author of Corporate Casual, Stop Trying to Be Someone Else in Sales. With over a decade of experience in the accounts receivable management space, he's built a career at the intersection of sales, relationship-driven growth, and operational execution. In addition to his role at Cedar Financial, Chris hosts multiple podcasts where he sits down with leaders across credit, collections, finance, and sales to unpack what's actually working in the field, not just in theory, but in real-world practice. Thanks for joining us today, Chris. Delighted to chat with you and unlock a bunch of interesting AR themes.
My guy, what an intro, dude. Thank you so much for having me. I have to tell you, I'm such a big fan of Heroes of AR. I love all of the different guests. I love the mission of the podcast, and really, there's such a small pocket of people that really drive into the sales side, the production side, the operations side of accounts receivable management. And so I couldn't be more stoked to chop it up with you today, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this. And I'm sure there's a lot that we'll definitely be unpacking together. And, in the interest of time and without further ado, let's get down to it.
Let's go.
All right. So this episode is not, it's very different from what we would usually do, cover a lot of themes specifically on the B2B AR side of things. What we're going to do today is super interesting because we're going to be drawing parallels and also identifying dissimilarities between how it works across the B2B and B2C sectors. So before we get down to some of the nuances and some of the finer conversations around this theme, Chris, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you do at Cedar Financial and how does it work across these different sectors?
Yeah. So I'm the Vice President of Sales over at Cedar Financial. For those of you guys who don't know, Cedar is a global accounts receivable management firm. So what does that mean? Really fancy language for we support our clients on the first party side, helping billing and invoicing before anything's delinquent. We help them in the early intervention side, which is that kind of 30, 60, 90 before it gets significantly delinquent side. And then obviously we're a licensed third party debt recovery firm, nationally licensed. We operate in over 170 countries worldwide. And so with respect to what I do every day, and even kind of bridging back to the stark differences between a B2B landscape model or a B2C landscape model. I mean, we're operating in, obviously, your manufacturing, your kind of business to business SaaS, but then we're also on retail and e-commerce or higher education or healthcare, which is very B2C. And to be frank, requires a little bit more sensitivity. Obviously, the regulations are heightened when you're dealing with a B2C profile versus B2B. And so I'm excited to get into the weeds with you on what some of those kind of nuances are, not in just trying to land those portfolios in terms of a sale, but what does it actually look like in terms of production and operations? And, how do you get the best success on that inventory that you're working on?
Awesome. one can tell that you've delivered this with aplomb, this introduction so many times that it's become second nature to you. So the fact that you're delivering it so fluidly bodes well for me. And yeah, could be more excited to get this show on the road as we speak.
I think it means I've been doing this for too long, man.
There you go. There you go.
But I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is also the concept of Heroes of AR, right? This is also about putting the spotlight and showcasing the stories of folks like you who've been, I mean, not really in the weeds per se, but definitely in the industry for a while. And yeah, let's get this, let's get, just dive further deeper into this. Awesome.
Let's go.
All right. So one of the key things that you mentioned while you were delivering your brief introduction there, Chris, as well, is the fact that you touched upon delinquency, right? And that's something that I want to, dive into slightly off the bat, like quickly off the bat there. Now, when it comes to collections, in your experience, and what do you think should definitely happen before an account becomes delinquent? Now, for instance, what I'm getting at is there a pre-delinquency playbook for both B2B and B2C cases that you have experienced, that you have fine-tuned and streamlined over a period of time? How do you look at it in that sense?
Yeah, what a great question. It's a heavy question for our first chat. So the first I could tell you is that hands down, the biggest mistake that I see that creditors make in terms of being proactive about the potential for any account going delinquent is just that. There is zero proactivity. And so, look, in today's landscape, we use this expression omnichannel, digital omnichannel communications. What the heck does that mean? Dude, it means fire on every communication channel available to you. So I'm talking about your phone calls, your emails, your SMS text messages. Creditors are growing more into a landscape where they've got internal portals or like an app that you could download on your phone. And so going kind of back to your question on, what should creditors be doing in the pre-delinquency stage is they should certainly have a ramp up, at least until that 30-day where, look, this is my favorite example that I use. My light bill, I am a part of the app. I tuned in and allow them to send text messages. Do you know how handy it is that I'll get a text message 5 days before my bill is due? I know that it's due on the 15th, but God forbid the ACH didn't work, or I've been in scenarios where it's set up on the auto pay and there's like a mechanism that doesn't work on their side. It's just that little effort, just sending the consumer a text that, hey man, light bill's due in 5 days. This is what the balance is. That type of proactivity, I cannot tell you the level of significance that does in decreasing your overall delinquent balances. Because a lot of what AR companies or what ARs are doing with creditors is it's not a problem until it's a problem. And so that reaction rather than being proactive is you're starting day one when you're already in a bad place of non-payment, even if it's 1 day of non-payment. So best advice I can give, and look, this is for the B2B side and the B2C side. Right. I focus on B2C just because that's an avenue of larger inventory, right? Mm-hmm. Commercial business, ones and twos, B's and C's, that could be hundreds of accounts, thousands of accounts. So the ability to have an effective system where you're reaching out on every channel is key. And I'll say one more thing, and we'll probably drive into this, is that the reason that omnichannel is important is look at your customer demographic, right? And we'll use healthcare, for instance, because it's such a wide array. You've got older patients who they might not be text messengers. They might not be really keen to their emails, right? You might have younger patients like me. Like, I don't so much check my personal email, but if you shoot me a text, chances are I'm going to be aware and I'm going to get in touch with you, or I will download the app and try and communicate with you. So that omni-channel presence in being proactive, like, look, man, you got to meet your customer on their preferred channel. And that's really kind of the gold of having the ability to fire on all cylinders.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And that's such a pertinent point because it's not just about collecting at the right time from the right customer, but it's also being able to personalize these channels of engagement, right? As you mentioned, it could be email, it could be via text message, it could be via phone call. And then you, over a period of time, while you're working with these different customer segments, you identify what channel works best when you're trying to optimize for conversion. And in this case, conversion is essentially like a payment, right? And yeah, I mean, that's something that goes under the radar, I feel, pretty often.
Absolutely. And look, we could even take it a step further. And I love that you had mentioned the word personalize, right?
Right.
So
Right.
let's get away from reaching out before the delinquency and let's jump more into a world of, okay, you are in the early stage. Man, I'm 2 days late. I'm up to 20 days late, whatever. So the way that you show that you actually care about reconciling or resolution is personalize that message. Like there's a way different take on if I receive a phone call or a text message or an email that says, hey, you're 5 days late on your bill. If you don't do this in 20 days, we're going to do that. Very aggressive, right? But
Right.
imagine if you got a text message that said, hey, man, notice that you didn't make payment. Is everything all right? Anything,
Right.
anything that we could do to help? Um,
Right.
those two different, rather than being an
True.
aggressor, now you're an ally. And if I get a message that goes, hey, man, anything I could do to help? Hell yeah. I'm going to open the floodgates. And maybe that's when I say, look, dude, I just lost my job, or man, we're a little tight on funds this week. And then it's the onus of the creditor to be able to have some flexibility. Chris, no worries, man. Happens to the best of us. Would you be able to do half right now? And then maybe we can do a deferment half the next week or the next month. That opening of the door to be able to engage in a flexible dialogue, I'm telling you, is one of the most missteps that creditors experience to be able to see payment activity actually come in. They're one size fits all. If you don't pay me this amount on this day, you're already done. It's 2026. We've never seen higher consumer debt than we ever have in the history than this year alone. Like, come on, man. Work with your customers, dude. Work with them, and I promise they'll make payment.
Very true. Very true. I think even for us at Growfin, of course, you can and businesses can leverage automation. They can set up email cadences and follow up outreach. There is method to the madness. There's a strategy in place. But the tonality and the language that you use across these channels of communication is also so critical. And that's when you go from just treating your customers as a mere number on a spreadsheet to an actual, living, breathing growth partner that you're building a relationship, a long-term relationship with, right? And I think that's something that a lot of businesses, because of the, internal and external pressures of just merely collecting on time, they encounter this on a daily basis. And I think that's where also this entire aspect of humanizing outreach comes in. You can use as much technology as you want, but it needs to, sort of like move hand in glove.
Yeah. And look, not for nothing, I'm bred from the sales side. And so one of the things that I'm always preaching with my clients and these creditors is lifetime value, LTV.
Yes, of course.
And so if your efforts of flexibility and you're being genuine and human, you're not doing it and going, oh gosh, this takes extra effort because I'm personalizing. Like, let's take a cell phone bill, for instance. So having a cell phone is quite expensive, right? And if you remain with that same carrier for 10 years, your LTV for that company is bonkers. They even have loyalty price. Hey, 5 years as a customer, we'll give you a little discount. So the lifetime value of the longevity of any of your customers, very, very important. And so you're going to let a tiny hiccup of non-payment ruin the entire potential of what your LTV could be moving forward. It's just not a good business model, man. It costs a lot more from your overhead to bring on a brand new customer starting from scratch rather than preserving the integrity of the relationship with a customer you already have. So you got to work with them, man.
True, absolutely. And that also shows, how companies or businesses view these different customer cohorts, right? Not just as someone who's not paid for 30, 60, or 90 days and fall into one of these aging buckets, but someone who, even if they probably, their payments are delayed over a certain period of time, if they're valuable enough to retain, I think it puts a lot of things into perspective. Of course, there are certain trends that develop over time related to a specific customer. If you see that they're constantly raising disputes, they're violating their promises to pay, things like that. So yeah, just building on that thread alone, we talked about personalization across channels, some of the tonality that can be used. There's a huge difference because at the end of the day, you are evoking an emotion in your customers, because if you look at it bare bones, you're actually getting someone to part with their hard-earned money, and that's one of the most difficult things to do. You just had a brainwave. I thought I should put it out there.
Let's go.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we talked a little bit about some of the salient nuances required to actually build out a strong pre-delinquency playbook. Now, one of the things that we do at Growfin also is we play with a lot of data involved, right? And that is the foundation on which successful and effective automation actually, bears dividends and results in the long run. Now, some of the things that determine a lot of the success of any AR automation strategy is the quality and the quantity of behavioral data that sits, within the system, and it can no longer sit disconnected, right? Systems have to talk to each other. Companies have access to a ton of data specific to every single business customer, whether it's on the B2B side, whether on the B2C side. So if I could ask you, what are some of the behavioral elements that accounts receivable teams need to look at over a period of time that makes it effective enough for automation and the likes of AI or agentic AI to actually deliver the value that businesses desire?
That's a great question, man. I was just talking about this at ArmTech 2026 in Dallas. That's Mike Gibbs' show. Anybody tuning in, if you're not familiar, definitely it's one of the biggest tech conferences in the ARM space every year. So going back to your question, look, and I know you're familiar with this, agencies forever have been using a data model scaling what is the probability of payment called propensity to pay. And in this new fancy world of AI, it makes that analysis a lot more concrete, because now what we get to do is look at millions of data points. So going back to your question, the very first thing in your propensity to pay model is, what are you looking at? You're looking at, where are they located? What's the age? What's their gender? What insights do I have on their financial health? Are they a frequent flyer of being late to pay? Do they have other things on their credit report going against them? What is the nature of the business? Is it a cell phone bill, or is this something a little bit more out of left field, like they purchased an e-commerce product and they didn't make payment on that on like a BNPL, if you will? All of these, and I gave you a small token. There are millions of data points that and I mean, like Experian and TransUnion, they've got their own propensity models. What we do at Cedar is we utilize our historical data on what worked, what didn't work, to develop our propensity model. And so the very first thing is, you want to iron out, what is the probability of repayment? And then what it's going to do is it's going to give you that data tree on, and kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Look, it's a younger demographic. These guys are probably going to be more prone to a digital communication strategy. Oh, it's an older demographic. This might be one where, like, man, let's pick up the phone. Let's send a letter in the mail. We want to meet them on their preference. So having that understanding that it's not a one size fits all is core. And then the ability to leverage that data to, we call it like a 4-step process is, look, man, truth be told, In the first 30 days, I want to figure out one of four things to put you into a category. And that is, are you willing and able to pay? Are you willing but unable to pay? Financial hardship. Are you unwilling but able to pay? There's your dispute. And then the worst of them, are you unwilling and unable to pay? And that's where you start considering, maybe there's a settlement plan that we can jump on. Or let's hear the AR story on why you do have a dispute. Look, people are not inherently bad. And sometimes they have a real rubbish experience with a creditor that the creditor is not familiar with. And so, look, we see a lot of bogus disputes that we're able to dismay right away. But for an agent, or even just for an internal AR, get the story, man. Understand what happened from the very beginning to where we are now, at why they might feel that way, and then using that personalization, that genuine approach, like, hey, man, I'm not trying to get all over you. I just want to know what happened to see if I could help you, see if we can fix it moving forward in the future. So that's really what we're doing right now in terms of analyzing mass bodies of data, lock in that propensity to pay score. And also, if you are a debt collector or you're in this industry, man, that propensity model really helps because it allows you to focus on your hots right away. Dude, these guys got a 97% probability. Whatever happened, maybe their card expired and they got a chargeback, and that's why you're reaching out, or something very simple. Prioritize that, get your quick wins, and then that opens the door up for you to be able to get a little bit more personalization when you reach that RPC or you're into engagement and go, hey, man, what happened? And more importantly, how can I help you? So,
Right. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I think a couple of key things I want to pick your brains on that same thread. Very interesting, sort of the 4x4 matrix that you spoke about, like the decision tree there. A lot of complex AR automation systems are also based on a lot of these, sort of signals per se, to be able to bucketize customers as well. And that's something we do at Growfin as well, just being able to give businesses the opportunity to slice and dice these customer segments across their propensity to pay, right? Now, you mentioned propensity to pay. There are so many factors that can be built into this model alone. In your experience, I wanted to ask you, because it's also about not just the propensity to pay, the confidence with which you can say that, okay, these are customers that are, as you said, 97% likely to pay in the first 30 days, etc. It also comes down to a dynamic health score, right? Like the dynamic health scoring model that, something that we do is at Growfin as well. There are some 20 plus odd factors that we take into consideration, starting from their credit rating to their contractual terms, the method of payment, so on and so forth. So many factors, right?
Yeah.
In your experience, how is that? Like, you must have, since you've been, in the industry for a while, this propensity to pay modeling or the dynamic health score involved here, how have you seen that evolve over a period of time as businesses have gotten more and greater access to data points, millions of data points, as you said?
So, and I mean, and gosh, I always try and stray away from this word, but here we go. AI, man, AI. Like, look, we'll probably get into the agentic models, the LLM, something that's a little bit more conversational. But at the grassroots, the inception of AI in this industry was, hey, man, how do I analyze millions of data points to be able to develop a concise configuration of a health score or a propensity or and dude, now we're even forking in political landscape. The politics are crazy right now in the United States. And there are certain states where we bake in what the political climate is of a certain area code or the region or the state itself. And that affects that propensity model. And I mean, it's ever changing as well. You don't just get one score and that's the score the rest of your life. As you said, you're looking into financial health on the individual or even the company, What's their assets? Do you own any assets? You got a car? Do you have a house? You got other people reporting on your credit? And not only that is what time of year is it? You know what I mean? On during the holidays, right? Everybody's out, they're charging their credit cards, you're buying Christmas gifts. Historically, you're going to see propensity models drop during that time. One, because people are focused on spending their money elsewhere. Now let's look at an example like tax season. Ooh, everybody just got a fat tax return. We all got a couple extra bucks in our pocket. And so it's not a set it and forget it. You got to continuously be running these propensity models to be able to update a realistic score on their probability. And absolutely, if you're not using AI for that, my recommendation would be put all the super fancy stuff aside, at least use it to be able to make concise decisions based off of large bodies of data.
No, awesome. I think some of the points that you mentioned here make so much sense. And it's also a reflection of how flexible the data models also are to be able to factor in these ever-changing, sort of dynamics as well. And the great point that you made there is seasonality. I think that is something that, again, flies under the radar because it is going to fluctuate across the course of the year. I think that was a very, very pertinent point there made. Super. And I also like the fact how this conversation is flowing. We've started right at the top. We're making a significant segue now into AI as well, something that is my A, bread and butter, and B, something that I'm truly passionate about as well.
Let's go.
All right. So now we spoke about how personalization is obviously key. To be able to do this at scale is where success truly comes from. Now, while AR teams are creating AI-enabled or AI-powered collections, processes, and strategies, there are some fundamentals and foundations that they have to get right from day one, right? This could be in the form of payment reminder cadences. This could be in the form of email summarizations to handle disputes better or faster, things like that, right? Like, what do you think are the non-negotiables in this case, in your experience as well, that AR teams, when they are collecting from customers, what do you think they need to get right from day one? We spoke about channels, we spoke about tonality.
Yeah.
Anything else?
So, I mean, specifically in the AI world, if you are considering adopting some of this technology is really cool. And if you get it right, your ability to scale is like, man, we just really flipped the table. This is awesome. But going back to non-negotiables is make sure that, especially if you're an early adopter, make sure you're solving an actual problem and not just adding a fancy new feature. And the way that you identify if you're solving a problem is, drum roll, back to the data, man.
Right.
You've got this AI to assess billions of data points to go, hey, look, you know what? We are receiving a lot of inbound call volume on the weekends. Our office is closed on the weekends, or we're finding that when we send an SMS text campaign, that especially the younger demographic, they're trying to get a hold of us during the week after their school hours, their own work hours at like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. And what happens? Nobody to talk to. And so, and this is where we can really nerd out, which is getting into the IVR. And if this new agentic conversational LLM is ultimately replacing IVR, or do they work in cohesion? For those of you guys listening, IVR essentially just when you call, chances are you're getting a robotic voice. Press 1 if you'd like to do this. Press 2, and it used to work. It still works. Look, we even get a ton of payments based off IVR, but we're transitioning into a world where consumers want to tell you the story, man. And not every creditor has the bandwidth or the staffing for every staff agent to hear the story, right? And so just by making that one tweak or piloting okay, let's get an agentic conversationalist bot that answers after 8 p.m. And they can do, doesn't even have to be a large language model. It could be a small language model. Keep the guardrails in. Those are things that you should consider experimenting with, but only if you identified a problem that you need to solve versus just, oh, I bought a new car because it's the newest model. Is there anything wrong with your old car? Well, no, that's the newest model. So I wanted to bring it in. So solve a problem. And then one of the other things baked into non-negotiables is that before you do anything, you have to set your compliant guardrails, especially like, look, going back to what's the difference between B2B and B2C. B2B, it could be a little bit more wild, wild west. Obviously, there's still regulations. You got to reach out amicably, XYZ. But in the B2C world, with respect to PII, which is personal information, 7 and 7, how many times can you reach out during the span of a week? What are the mandatories? Like, got to send the model validation notice. Obviously, every call you're going to have that mini Miranda. It's just very, very different. And so when you're looking at the adoption of some of this new technology, before you do anything, you need to make sure that your regulatory and your compliant guardrails, FDCPA, TCPA, CFPP, all of your fancy acronyms are so locked in, tried and tested, because we've all heard it, man, especially in the LLMs. The last thing an agency needs is for their conversational bot to start hallucinating and spouse out a ton of stuff that is not included in your scripting module. And guess what that's going to do? That's going to put your agency in a ton of hot water. So last thing on that is get your guardrails. And also, if you are in the business of wanting to take a leap into the AI, it's not a set it and forget it. In fact, everybody's always saying, oh, AI is going to take our jobs. It's absolutely not. It's going to empower human beings to focus on the things that matter. Let some automation take care of the low-hanging fruit and the easy stuff. But number 3, there are companies that I work with right now that have a dedicated full-time either individual AI surveillance monitor or a maintenance monitor or a whole department. Because if you're deploying this agentic model across 100 client profiles, I want to know every single engagement, everything they said, everything that they didn't say, to make sure specifically those compliant guardrails are adhered to. Because the moment that you shift even a second of hallucination, that's when those windows open up, and it's no good. So
fantastic. 3 points you made there, right? I found resonance with that as well. One sort of key takeaway there, the phrase that you mentioned, it's not a set it and forget it model at all. And that is what agentic AI or AI models are supposed to be doing. The fact that they're able to adapt in real time to, of course, the data models that they are fed on, but at the same time, be robust enough not to hallucinate, right? And the guardrails that you spoke about there, sort of, those become sort of like sacrosanct. No degree of technology or automation can actually prop you up for success if you don't really have those guardrails in place. And again, tying it back to something that we're also going to make a quick segue to towards the end of this conversation is, where do you draw that line between, the involvement of humans and having AI take over a bunch of different things? So many advantages just in terms of reducing repetitive, manual, low-value tasks, increasing productivity, being more consistent in terms of performance, things like that. But according to you, where do you think that balance sort of comes in, where you have a human in the loop driving an AI-enabled system?
Yeah. So it really draws down to the ability for a human handoff. And going back to those trigger words, right? So look, if I'm calling in and I'm just having trouble making a payment, but my mission is to make a payment, man, let a conversational bot deal with that all day.
Right.
They're going to help you. They're going to get you the quickest solution. Boom, boom, boom. Right. But if I'm calling in, goes back to one of the comments I made earlier, is that people want to tell their story, whether it's a story in the face of financial hardship, whether it's the story in the face of a dispute, like I felt like I was wronged. People want to tell their story. And so in any of those more complex conversational models, the ability to transfer, to warm transfer to a live human being, that is the magic. It is making sure that humans, their involvement is on the stuff that matters. You're sending them an RPC. Chances are you're sending them a hot file. Everybody in this industry knows that if somebody is disputing an account, there is a higher likelihood or probability of repayment because, dude, if I wasn't going to make a payment, whether I have a dispute or not, I'm not going to phone in and give you my story. And so all of these little things, like put your human being in the power and the position to be a human being to deal with some of those more complex dialogues. And, let your robot deal with more of the administrative, like these are the quick wins, the low hanging fruit. And look, like I just got back from Omtech. Some of these new models, very, very, they're genuine. It is conversational. They've got tone and inflection. Can you tell right away? Like, yeah, I'm probably talking to a robot. Yes, you can. They're not trying to fool anybody. There's disclosure laws that if you do call in, hello, I'm Chris, just to let you know, I am an AI virtual agent. And just by that disclosure, if it's something more complex, it gives the consumer or a business owner or whoever, controller, it gives them that window to go, oh, great. Can you transfer me to a live agent? And boom, that cohesiveness, the seamlessness of the customer journey, which is what you need to keep at the forefront, because my objective is let's get the payment. And if I can't get the payment, let me get the story. And then we'll figure out how to get the payment. So that was a long-winded answer, but yeah, man, that human handoff is core. It's essential.
Makes sense. Absolutely. As we like to say at Growfin, right? Powered by AI, but guided by human judgment in many ways.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is an edge to edge, as I say. I mean, it could be P2P, it could be B2C. It is a human to human, sort of equation.
Absolutely.
And no amount of technology can actually, it should just supplement that. It cannot replace that altogether. And I think that is one of the myths that we are also trying to bust with properties like Heroes of AR, where technology is an enabler and not something that is, the more you resist change, you are more likely to potentially fall behind in terms of the goals that you're chasing, in terms of competition that you're combating. So hand in hand. And yeah, super answer, Chris, man. That was awesome. Really liked that segment.
Let me see. There was one more thing I wanted to say, just because I said customer journey, right? And this is especially for the more enterprise. Like if you are going hard in the paint on the adoption of AI, here's some things that I think that you should focus on with respect to customer journey is where I think a lot of these new conversational agents are getting it wrong is they don't pull from all of the data. So let me give you an example, right? If we're on the phone and you're talking to an AI bot and the AI bot knows, this is a hard to pay, but I can leverage probably a 10% discount, right? And then I say, hey, look, what if we can give you a 10% discount? And the consumer goes, that's great. If you could do that, get me onto the portal. And then that AI sends a link to a portal. Consumer gets on the portal. Hey, buddy, where's the 10% that we just talked about, right? Well, worse, they receive a text message after that AI conversation they had, and it's still reflecting the exact same balance without that 10%. And so one of the things, again, thinking of customer journey and going back to omnichannel digital communication is make sure all of that communication is seamless with the engagement that just occurred. Because the quickest way to frustrate somebody to no end, frustrate them to not making a payment at all, is to have that conversation and go, all right, cool. I'm getting my 10% off, whatever. I'll just make a payment. And then immediately when they go to try to do that, they are met with a brick wall where that 10% is nowhere to be found. So customer journey, if that you keep that at your core focus with respect to all of your channels of communication, that's how you win the game, man. That's how you win the game.
That is such an important insight. I think it came through some of the different themes that we discussed today. But I mean, a simple example of that could be, for instance, you've made the payment and then it's probably not gotten registered at the back end, and you actually get a payment reminder the very next day within 24 hours. How frustrating can that actually be? Especially,
and it happens all the time, dude. It happens all the time.
True. Super insights shared, Chris. I think more than just trying to gain nuggets of wisdom out of you, I think I've just enjoyed having a very free-flowing conversation where we've made very organic segues. Instead of me throwing questions at you, it's turned into a pretty solid peer-to-peer industry expert sort of discussion. And I think that's what we want to do at Heroes of AI, not just spotlight stories, but actually have genuine conversations around AI-related themes. So thank you so much, Chris.
Absolutely, man. And look, I'll tell you, that's why I love Heroes of AR, because it's not, I host podcasts. Right. It's not easy to host a podcast. You've got your list of questions, but to be able to create cohesion in dialogue, it's just two guys. One, I love anybody who is as interested in the accounts receivable management industry as me. And you know this as well as I do. We're hard to find. There's not many of us, right? And so if you could get into a scenario where you're like, man, this guy just gets it, that's where the magic of Heroes of AR comes from. So I'm so excited that you invited me to come hang out with you. As I said, longtime fan of Heroes of AR, and just truly blessed to be able to kind of wrap around some of this cool new technology and what we're seeing in the field as it relates to debt recovery or non-payment. So thank you so much, man.
Absolute pleasure. And I'm sure like our audience will also benefit a lot from some of the insights that you shared. Even if they don't, I think they're just going to enjoy some, just like a solid conversation around AR themes. I'm sure we'll find our audience, or I feel we're going to break new ground, finding another audience for this sort of conversation out together. So yeah, looking forward to that. Thanks so much, Chris. Absolute pleasure having you. And keep fighting the good fight, as we say here at Growfin.
I love it. Thanks for having me, man.